Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We are back. Continuing with our look at the triennial Torah portion. We are continuing with our look at the book of Deuteronomy. Devarim. Looking at Deuteronomy chapter 21. Deuteronomy chapter 21. And this portion is called If One Be Found Slain. If one be found slain. We're going to just go ahead and jump right in. We'll read the chapter and then we'll just double back and look at some of the nuggets that we find inside of the portion. So let me go ahead and pull up for us chapter. We'll just go ahead and read through. And then we'll discuss. All right, let me go ahead and pull that up for us here. Deuteronomy 21. Go ahead and start reading for us, starting with verse number 1. Wait a second here. Let me change versions. Okay, very good. Nice and loud right there.
It says, when anyone is found slain, lying in the field and the land, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess, and it is not known who struck him, then your elders and your judges shall go out, and they shall measure the distance from the slain man to the cities round about. And it shall be that the elders of the city nearest to the slain man shall take a heifer, which has not been worked, and which is not pulled with a yoke, and the elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to the wadi with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown. And they shall break the heifer's neck there in the wadi. And the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for Yahweh your Elohim has chosen them to serve him, and to bless in the name of Yahweh. And by their mouth every strife and every stroke is tried. And let all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man wash their hands over the heifer, whose neck was broken, in the wadi. And they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. O Yahweh, forgive your people Israel, whom you have ransomed, and do not allow innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel. And the blood guilt shall be pardoned to them. Thus you purge the guilt of innocent blood from your midst when you do what is right in the eyes of Yahweh. When you go out to fight against your enemies, and Yahweh your Elohim shall give them into your hand, and you shall take them captive, and shall see among the captives a woman fair of form, and shall delight in her, and take her for your wife. Then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head, and trim her nails, and put aside the mantle of her captivity, and shall dwell in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a month of days. And after that you shall go in to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you are not pleased with her, then you shall let her go at her desire. But you do not sell her at all for silver. Do not treat her harshly, since you have humbled her. When a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they have borne him children, both the loved and the unloved, and the firstborn son is of her who is unloved. Then it shall be, on the day he makes his sons to inherit his possessions,
He is not allowed to treat the son of the beloved wife at first as firstborn in the face of the son of the unloved, who is truly the firstborn. But he is to acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. When a man has a wayward and rebellious son, who is not listening to the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have disciplined him, does not listen to them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gate of his city, and shall say to the elders of his city, this son of ours is wayward and rebellious. He is not listening to our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of his city shall stone him to death with stones. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst, and let all Israel hear and fear. And when a man has committed a sin worthy of death, then he shall be put to death, and you shall hang him on a tree. Let his body not remain overnight on the tree, for you shall certainly bury him in the same day. For he who is hanged is accursed of Elohim, so that you do not defile the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance.
All right. Very good. All right, let us go back up here and look at a few things. Starting at the beginning. It's interesting when we look over here at the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9 verses here. It's interesting that we see here a peculiar method for atoning for sin. If we look at verse, read 8 and 9 again for us.
8 and 9?
Yeah.
It says, O Yahweh, forgive your people Israel, whom you have ransomed, and do not allow innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel. And the blood guilt shall be pardoned to them. Thus you purge the guilt of innocent blood from your midst when you do what is right in the eyes of Yahweh.
Okay, very good. So again, we see over here that this method that is used, the thing that they're doing is forgiving sin, and it is also pardoning sin. The guilt, the blood guilt, as it says in this translation, for the sin that happened. It's interesting when we look at these scriptures. I always am kind of reminded of the last moments of Yeshua when he spoke with his disciples in the last chapter of Luke, and he explained to his disciples and showed them, enlightened them, where he was found in the Torah. Those who know, are familiar with the law, know that Yeshua, the son of the living Elohim, is not mentioned by name in the Torah. There's somebody of great importance that has the same name as him in the Torah, but the one that we know of as Yeshua, who walked the earth and had 12 disciples and healed the sick and raised the dead and caused the mute to here, he's not mentioned by name in the Torah. And so when we look at the Torah and understand what it was that Yeshua was doing, he was helping for his disciples to understand from a spiritual perspective that although not from a literal standpoint, Yeshua, he's not there literally. He's literally not there. But from a spiritual standpoint, he's all over the place. And he showed this to his disciples. And he, in fact, is showing it to us even right now. And so when we look over here, it's interesting that we see this heifer. This heifer whose neck, it says, is broken. It's a very peculiar method that is being used to atone for sin and to forgive sin. When we look at the sin offering, the way in which sin is dealt with according to Torah, is a burnt offering. It's a burnt offering. There's blood that's poured out. If we refer back to the first chapters of Leviticus, where it speaks of the burnt offering, the sin offerings, how it is that they were to be done. A bullock was used. That's a male cow, right? That's a male cow. A heifer, obviously, is female.
Yep.
It's a female cow. His neck is not cut. His neck is not cut. It says that his neck is broken. You break the heifer's neck. For the sin offering, they didn't break the neck. They cut it. Right? They cut the neck and released the blood from the body. Right? And they burned the offering. None of that's done over here. But yet and still, we see this peculiar, this obscure and unconventional way that the guilt of the sinner is absolved. There's no temple. There's no altar. They're taking it down into the valley. They're taking it down into the valley. Let's look at some of these things, because there's things that we're able to draw from when we look at some of these things over here. Let me go ahead and pull up for us our tools here. Let's look at first of all, again, we're dealing with this unknown assailant who's killed someone, and he's found just laying somewhere, right? And so the elders and the judges, they measure the distance of where this person is closest to. And then it becomes the responsibility of the ones who are closest, the elders that are closest to the body, right? And then they are responsible for, taking over from there, right? Which is interesting you know, enough as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they go over, and let's see, as we go down, if we go to verse. Okay, let's start with this in verse 3. Again, we see that this is a heifer, right? And understanding where we began talking about this in verses 8 and 9, where this thing that's done is, this is important to remember, is atoning for the guilt, and it's bringing forgiveness for the sin, right? And again, keeping this in mind, this is not a sin offering, traditional, right? It's not a traditional sin offering. We know what a sin offering looks like. This isn't it, okay? And so they take a heifer, right? And so this heifer has to be one that has not been worked. Has to be one that has not pulled the yoke. And so when we look at this, right, it's not this. So what's the significance here? What's the significance of this heifer that hasn't done any manual labor? Typically, when we deal with this thing that's going to function as a sacrifice, it's going to function as, and the only reason why I'm saying sacrifice is because we're talking about this thing that's going to absolve the sin guilt and bring forgiveness, right? Because again, the word sacrifice, I don't believe we've read that in this chapter, but understanding what it is that this act is doing, I'm just using that word. And so again, when comparing it, when we think about the sin sacrifice, we find this bullock that's without blemish. It's of a certain age, and that's without blemish. But here, it's interesting that the criteria for this heifer is one that hasn't worked, one that hasn't pulled the yoke. It's interesting when we think about the comparison between these sacrifices that are brought in Yeshua, right? Because Yeshua, being the perfect sacrifice that he was without sin. He was without blemish, right? So how do we compare this heifer that was that brought forgiveness for sin and atoned for the guilt of this killing? This thing, it didn't have to be without blemish. It only had to have not pulled a yoke. But when you think about what that can represent, it for us something that was not controlled by man or flesh or the carnal nature, right? When you think about the idea of this thing that is being worked or that is yoked, this is to work and do those things that are necessary in this physical realm, which involves toiling, right, and working. And so this is one that wasn't its work wasn't directed towards this realm, right? It was something that was dedicated to something else. Its dedication didn't involve the things that touched the earth. It was innocent. The animal was innocent, and also it was innocent in its dealings with again, these things that touched the earth. It wasn't used for carnal purposes, which causes it to be this perfect sacrifice. It causes it to essentially be this thing that was without blemish, because it was never connected to the toiling of the ground. And so, again, when we look at this peculiar method of dealing with this obvious sin that has taken place, this slaying of a man, the way in which that it is resolved is done in this unconventional manner, which again is something that helps us to look towards Yeshua, because we speak of Yeshua, the Lamb of Elohim, who was slain for the forgiveness of our sins, but he wasn't slain on the altar. Right? He wasn't even part of the prescribed method, for absolving, atoning, forgiving our sins. Right? When we look in the Torah, it don't tell us nothing about a man shedding his blood for the forgiveness of our sins, or for the atonement of the guilt that's associated with those sins. But what we do find in the Torah is these unconventional means for dealing with things that don't go along with the status quo in regards to the forgiveness of sins. And so it's interesting that when we look over here at this thing that is being done with this heifer, whose neck is broke for the forgiveness and the atonement of sins, it's interesting, that we see this over here, because again, Hebrews, says that, without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins. Right? And so again, we think about the way that sin is dealt with, but the Torah over here is giving us a glimpse of this unconventional, obscure way that the Most High will deal with sin. And by the way, when we look at this, let's see here, if we go down to hold on a second. Let me look at this. Let's see. This is going to be verse number 5. And by their mouth, it says, every strife and every stroke is tried. Every dispute every assault is settled by this thing that they're doing. It's this all inclusive thing that touches it touches what is done and what you've seen that is done, and it touches things that you haven't seen. Excuse me. Every dispute and every assault is dealt with again this unconventional method of absolving and forgiving sin and atoning for sin. And so, if this isn't something that helps us to be able to look towards Yeshua and understand that it's not necessary for him to be, transfigured into a lamb, a literal lamb, and taken to the actual temple, and his blood to be spilled at the brazen altar in order to atone for our sin. Because we see example over here in the Torah where you see this sin that has obviously happened, where there's no one to place the blame on, and there's able to be this blanket of forgiveness that's able to wash over the situation again in this unconventional way. To me, this is just something that's just utterly amazing. Somebody need to jump up and run around in a circle and come back and sit back down again. When we look at the things that were given in this Torah, if we look over at, let's drop down to verse 7. Something else that we're able to see over here. We have this utterance that's spoken. Right? All of the elders, they come together. Let the elders of the city nearest to the slain man wash their hands over the heifer, and they shall answer and say, this utterance that they speak now, this confession, this thing that is made over here. Our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. Let's look at some of these words over here, because it's interesting that this version here in verse 8, it says the blood guilt shall be pardoned, right? That word in the Hebrew is just blood, right? If we look at that here, let's see here. What's the thing that's pardoned? And the blood shall be forgiven them. This idea of a guilt that's associated with the blood is something that is implied. We see down here where we can have the idea of blood guiltiness, right? Or blood thirstiness, or blood shed. Even with just the idea here of this word for blood. But again, we're able to, it's not far reaching to be able to think about this in terms of a blood guilt, because this is what we're speaking about in the first place. The fact that you have this life that has been taken, right? The blood, the life has been taken from this individual, and somebody has to pay. right? And so here we see this this idea of this this action that needs to take place. And so when we look at this thing when we see this thing over here, this blood, we can think about it, of course, in the idea of it being, what it is, blood. But we also can see the action that's associated with it, which in this case would be kind of this blood guilt thing that happens as a result of the letting of the blood by, again, this unforeseen person. What do we have over here? Huh? Okay, so when we look at, again, the thing that's being done over here, again, we have this act that's happened. There is this act that is done for this forgiveness, this unconventional act. We have this confession that's pronounced, this pronouncement. And, as we're saying over here, when we look at what we know of in regards to Yeshua, the thing that he has, in fact, done for us is this unconventional act of atoning for our sins. Let's look over at the book of Isaiah. Because not only did Yeshua, when he spoke with his disciples, show himself to the disciples in the Torah, but also in the prophets, right? In the law and in the prophets.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say I don't understand this cryptic speech over here in the comments. I don't understand. I don't know what the point of it is. But when we look over in Isaiah, Yeshayahu 53, read for us verses 10 through 12.
12. 10 through 12 says, but Yahweh was pleased to crush him. He laid sickness on him, that when he made himself an offering for guilt, he would see a seed. He would prolong his days, and the pleasure of Yahweh prosper in his hand. He would see the result of the suffering of his life and be satisfied. Through his knowledge, my righteous servant makes many righteous, and he bears the crookedness. Therefore I give him a portion among the great, and he divides the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his being unto death, and he was counted with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many, and made the intercession for the transgressors.
Okay, very good. So when we look over in Isaiah, it helps us to understand what it is that Yeshua will eventually be and do for us, his people. He'll die, right? Because he poured out his soul, his being, unto death. And he was counted with the transgressors and bore, because of what he did, our sin. An unconventional, obscure method of absolving the sin of the people. Right? So we're able to understand that the way that the Most High will deal with the sin of Israel is in fact going to be in an unconventional way, not what we're necessarily looking for it to be, right? Not the way that it was even prescribed by the Most High in terms of goats and lambs and bullocks, and things of that nature. And so again, when we see things like this heifer with his neck broke in this valley, hey, let's go back over. Okay, so we came over here to Isaiah again to continue with the thought of the fact that the Most High has ordained for there to be these unconventional means for the forgiveness of sins. In this case, we're talking about an actual man bearing our sins and dying for our sins, right? But if we go back, something else that we can see over in Deuteronomy 21. Let's see, this version here, verse 4. Verse 4 says, read verse 4 again for us here.
It says, "And the elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to a wadi with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and they shall break the heifer's neck there in the wadi."
In the wadi. In the valley. If we look over here, it brings it down. You're bringing it down in the valley. So they chose not to translate this word. In fact, I'm not sure why they use that word there, because this word isn't wadi. But the King James translates it as the valley. But it's interesting that when we look, that its original sense is a stream, especially a winter torrent, a brook. And so when we think about a stream, right, you have this water, this place where fresh water is flowing, right? It's coming from a place, and it's flowing from a place to a place.
Yep.
Right? And so when we think about this idea that's being expressed to us through the scripture, another thing that we're able to connect back to Yeshua is the fact that this act is done, and part of the act is living water. Right? Living water, of course, points us to Yeshua. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He said that he is living water. Right? That if we drink from his water, that we won't never thirst again. Right? And so it's interesting that, again, when we see this act that's done with this heifer that his neck is broke, in this place, this valley, dealing with this stream or this flowing water. Okay, so again, thinking about what it is that we have made available to us as a result of this act that's done, right? Remember, we have this confession that's made by the elders. It wasn't me. I didn't see who did it, right? I wasn't involved, right? I'm free of blame, right? This confession that's made. And again, when they make the confession, when they make the pronouncement, when they do the act, that's how this forgiveness is applied to them. Because when you think about it, as the elders, as the judges, they're the sheriffs of the place, right? They're the keepers of the peace. The elders and the judges, they're the ones who maintain the order in the place, and so they testify that they didn't do it, right? And they also testify that they didn't know who did it. They didn't see who did it, right? They weren't involved in any way. And so the thing that we want to pay attention to here is the fact that we have this pronouncement, we have this confession, and we have this act. Let's go over to Romans 10. Read 9 through 14.
9 through 14. That if you confess with your mouth the Master Yeshua and believe in your heart that Elohim has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and one confesses with the mouth, and so is saved. Because the scripture says, whoever puts his trust in him shall not be put to shame. Because there is no distinction between Yehudi and Greek. For the same master of all is rich to all those calling upon him. For everyone who calls on the name of Yahweh shall be saved. How then shall they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him whom they have not heard? And how shall they hear without one proclaiming?
Okay, very good. So over here again, we see that the way in which this forgiveness is experienced by us is through this. There was an act that was performed. That act was done by, of course, Yeshua. And then there is a confession, a pronouncement that's made by the one who is receiving the benefits of that act. Mm-hmm. Right? And so again, it's interesting that, we see these things that help us to understand what it was that Yeshua has done for us. Mm-hmm. Right? We didn't physically go and get a animal, a sacrifice for our thing that we have done. But we accept the fact that this thing has been done for us, right? And we make this pronouncement that attaches ourselves to this thing that was done. That thing, of course, being Yeshua dying for our sins. Mm-hmm. Acts. (2:38).
And Kepha said to them, repent, and let each one of you be immersed in the name of Yeshua Messiah for the forgiveness of sins, and you shall receive the gift of the set-apart Spirit.
When we look back at this thing that we see with this unconventional application of a thing that we can like unto a sacrifice but isn't a traditional one, it helps us to understand that, we have come to a time where we're able to apply this thing to ourselves without actually taking a sacrifice somewhere and it being our animal that we're taking, and that thing actually being applied to our situation. What we have to do is accept what was done, repent from the thing that we have done in terms of our sin and turning away from our sin, and this other thing, this act of immersion that actually applies the work that Yeshua has done to our situation. And so it's interesting that we see, again, thinking about what we see in the Torah, this unconventional act that we see that's used for, again, the forgiveness of sins and the atonement of the blood guilt. Go ahead.
I was just going to say about when you get immersed, it should be in living water.
Yes.
As opposed to stagnant water.
Right. From a. That's true. It should be. From a pictorial standpoint. Right, from the idea that is giving you this picture of Yeshua, who is in fact living water. He gives us that picture. I'm as you're saying that, I'm reminded of this, seeing this person, this unnamed person, who these people are getting immersed and in a pool. And instead of being excited about people giving their life over to Yeshua, this person is like, that don't look like living water to me. Like, because these people are getting immersed in a pool.
A bathtub or something?
No, it was like a pool. It was like a
Swimming pool?
It was just a pool.
It probably had a filter in it.
It probably did have a filter, but I'm just saying the way people are about some things is kind of over the top. The idea of living water, yes, but so there's also ancient writings that we're able to look back and refer to, that the disciples, if they couldn't have living water, it should at least be cold. And so there was provisions that they were making. They weren't saying, well, I can't do it in living water, so I can't do it at all. That wasn't the case, right? And so the idea was to be immersed in His name. Best case scenario, yes, living water. But if it can't be living water, you do the best that you can do.
A big puddle.
Yeah. And so all that just to say that when we look at these things that's given to us, they're pictures that help us to be able to understand more what it is that the Most High has done for us. So again, with this heifer whose neck is broke, it's interesting that it talks about it breaking its neck, right? Because that same word that is used over here is also the same word that deals with the stiff neck, right? And so when you think about what's being done with this heifer, its stiff neck is being broken, right? It got to be able to be broke in order to turn. That's why you're not facing the Most High in the first place, because your neck is so stiff it can't move, right? And it's supposed to be turned towards the face of the Most High, but instead of being turned towards the Most High, it's turned towards whatever thing it is that you have put in the place of the Most High. And so that stiff neck needs to be broken. And so we see picture for us the breaking of the stiff neck, right? And so all of these things is just it's interesting that we're able to see all of these things that help us that point us towards Yeshua in a non-literal way. And we shouldn't look for it to be a literal way, because again, Yeshua, he sets the standard for us when he speaks those words to his disciples. Again, he wasn't literally spoken of in the Torah, in the law, in the prophets.
He had to bring it out.
It had to be brought out, right? It had to be, and the thing that he was bringing out was a spiritual understanding, right? It wasn't what is literally there, right? It wasn't on the surface level, right? It was the inner dimensions. Yeah.
Do you think that the scoundrel was eventually caught, or do you think?
I don't know. I think that
like the first 48 where the crime.
I think that the scoundrel didn't have to be caught because of the finality of the act that was done, right? Because remember, when we look in verse 5, it was over, right? Every dispute, every assault shall be settled by them, right? And so the scoundrel, he didn't need to be caught because it was over. It was fixed. It was done, right? You didn't have to know. The Most High knew, and the thing was settled, right? And so again, this is just another thing to, we say that we're going to give our lives over to the Most High. We're going to give ourselves over to the Most High. Sometimes, we're not able to remember all of the things that we have done towards the Father, against the Most High. We can't remember all the wickedness that we was involved in. But what we're able to do is say that from this point forward, we are going to follow after the Most High. We're going to turn away from our wicked ways, and we're going to turn towards the Most High and move in the direction of righteousness from this point forward. And so there's also a bit of ambiguity involved, because we're kind of thinking about the things the best that we know how in terms of our repenting, but for the most part, what we will be doing is turning from wickedness altogether, right? Which is this all-encompassing thing that happens. And so again, we see that picture for us with Deuteronomy 21 verses 1 through 9, with this killing of this heifer in the valley by this living water in this obscure way that again brings forgiveness for sin. If we go down verse 8, let's look at verse 8. Oh, we got to go back to Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, we said it, but we just want to be clear. Verse 8, Be merciful to thy people. Let's see here. What are we looking at? Be merciful, right? King James says, "Be merciful." So it could be, what's that mean? Kafar, right? To cover, to atone, to expiate, to placate, to cancel, to appease, to atone, to cleanse, disannul, forgive. Right? Merciful's way down here. But more specifically, the mercifulness that is being applied over here is forgiveness, is the covering of the sin, right? Is the fact that the Most High, there's wrath that's owed. I mean, there's a wrath that the Most High has ready for someone, and that wrath needs to be taken care of, right? And so the Most High's need for justice to be taken care of, that need is pacified, right? That taste that the Most High has in his mouth to pour out his anger is appeased by this act that is done, right? So again, forgiveness is found by this thing that's done, this breaking of the neck of the heifer, right? And forgiveness, atonement, in fact, reconciliation, in fact, is brought about. And so
I'm getting major Al-Khet vibes off of this.
Yes, go ahead.
No, it's just this is the Al-Khet right here. Forgive thy people, Israel, whom thou hast redeemed. You know.
Yeah. And again, when we think about redemption, right? This ransoming, this payment, this unconventional participant, which is the heifer, was used as a payment, as a ransom, as the facilitator of the forgiveness and the atonement.
In this short training video, I'm good.
And so we are able to see over here that the Most High again is picturing for us these ways that he is going to bring about these very important things. The most important thing that he brings about, which in fact is the forgiveness of sin. Let's go over to 1 John. What's 1 John 2 and 2 say? 1 John 2. Just read 1 and 2.
My little children, I write this to you, so that you do not sin. And if anyone sins, we have an intercessor with the Father, Yeshua Messiah, a righteous one. And he himself is an atoning offering for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for all the world. Okay, very good.
So again, we have this aspect of this thing that is all encompassing, right? Because again, when we think about Deuteronomy, every dispute, every assault is settled, right? All sin can be taken care of by this act, right? There was a specific thing that they're doing this thing for, which was the fact that they found this dead body, they don't know who killed it. There was a specific thing that they were taking this thing for. But when they do this thing, every dispute and every assault is settled by it.
Yep.
When we think about the fact that the thing that Yeshua has done, he did for his people, Israel. The thing that the act that he did was for a specific people. But guess what? When he did that act that was done for his specific people, it dealt with the situation at hand, which was the reconciliation of his people, but also for all those who will accept the sacrifice that he has provided.
Yeah.
And so even just like when we look at Deuteronomy 21, where it dealt with a specific situation, this thing was about this dead body we found over there by the wayside. And they went and found a bullock that, from the town that was closely associated with the finding of the body. But not only did it deal with that specific situation, but also every dispute and every assault was settled when that act was done.
Yep.
I mean, if this thing don't help us to look and see what it is that Yeshua has done for, as it says in 1 John 2, he atoned for our sins, Israel, but not ours only, but for the world. He dealt with this specific situation that happened, this specific situation that needed his intervention, but not only that, but other things outside of it as well. I mean, when people come with this thing, this idea that only Israel is saved, they don't understand.
Yeah.
They don't understand what it is that the scriptures are conveying. And this is just another example of this.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions, comments to those first 9 verses before we go down to verse number 10? Keep going. All right. So, if you have any pertinent things you want to add, just put them in the chat. Put them in the chat. I'll go back to Deuteronomy. Don't forget to hit the like button. Share the videos. Deuteronomy 21. Let's go down to verses 10 through I guess what is dealt with from 10 through 14, right? When you go out to fight against your enemies and you find these beautiful women that they got over there,
Mm-hmm.
and you decide that you want one of those women for yourself. Verse 11, you shall see among the captives a woman fair of form. Her form is fair. She's beautiful.
Translated, she look good.
She fine. She is a darling object. Yedidot. Yedidot. Yedidut. again, if we remember from last week, when you go and you fight the other nations, not the 7 nations, not the Hittites and the Jebusites and the Girgashites and all of those, the Canaanites, the Amorites, those ones you couldn't deal with. But these other ones, though, the other ones that was afar off, not the ones that was in the land that you were about to inherit, but the other ones, it was fair game. Fair game. So if you was a young person, ready to sow your royal oats, and you saw a woman that was fair of formed, and you delighted in her. You delighted in her. You had a desire unto her. Kashak. You was ready to cling to her. Right? You was ready elliptically.
Whoa, that's
I don't even know what that word means. Elliptically. Delight, desire, love. Right? You was ready to stick to her and have her stick to you. You could do it. Right? But it's interesting that when we look over here at this process that was taken. Let's look at some of this, because when we see this thing, we see love and compassion that's built in for this foreign woman. Some of these people, they sit up here and they try to put these characteristics on the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They try to put these characteristics that don't belong. Right? If he is an Elohim that is loving and compassionate, and these are characteristics that kind of define who he is, how is it then that he can be this respecter of persons, right? He, the Most High, in Torah law over here, makes it builds into Torah love and compassion for this foreigner. When we think about the fact that it says in verse 2, you bring her home to your house and you shave her head and you trim her nails. When you think about this act that is done, this act of trimming her nails and shaving her head, this act was about cleansing. This act was about purification. Right? And so the thing that was going on with this woman was she was being purified. Right? If we go back to, let's go back and look at Leviticus 14. Leviticus 14, verse 8. Read verse 8.
And he who is to be cleansed shall wash his garments, and shall shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, and shall be clean. Then after that he comes into the camp, but shall stay outside his tent 7 days.
Okay, we see over here, and just so we don't just say, well, this is the cleansing of the leper, right? So we can say that this shaving has to do with leprosy specific, right? But we see over here that part of the cleansing process was the shaving off of the hair. But we wanted to add to this Numbers 8 and 7, because that thing, it goes beyond leprosy. It was a thing that was associated with a cleansing process. So read verse 7.
And do this to them to cleanse them. Sprinkle water of sin offering on them, and they shall shave all their body, and shall wash their garments and cleanse themselves.
Okay, very good. So we see over here this thing that we're talking about over, this idea of shaving off the hair, was a way of cleansing. Right? It was a cleansing process. So we think about the fact that this woman, she was cleansed, right? There was a cleansing process, this renewal, a refreshing of a mind. It says that she removed the clothes of her captivity. She went from this status of being this, she was captured. She was a slave. She was someone who was possessed. She was booty from the battle, right? But she takes off those clothes of her captivity, and then she remains in the house, right? And so she's given this this status change, right? She's reclothed. It don't say that she's reclothed. It says that she's derobed. But we can assume that she's reclothed with new clothes that aren't connected to servitude anymore, right? Because she's preparing herself and being prepared to be a bride.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she's having this change of status. She's allowed to mourn for 30 days, right? She's not expected to just come in. Her daddy just got killed, right? Her brothers and cousins just got wiped out, and she's not expected just to jump right in and just to be all good about everything. She's given time to take in this transition.
A new situation.
She in fact has a new situation that she needs to be able to be able to accept. So she's given that time, which for Israel was our time, right? This is what we did, right? We mourned for this 30 days, right? And so already she's being treated as an insider. She's no longer being treated as an outsider. If we didn't care, we could just do whatever. Well, whatever. We mourn 30 days, but you just get over it right now and just, you mine now, right? But from the beginning, built into the Torah was, this transition point, this ability for this woman now to receive the benefits that's associated with our people, with the nation. She's treated just as part of the nation, right? She goes from being a prisoner to part of the nation. She goes from being an outsider to an insider. And again, she's given this time to be able to allow, this transition to sink in. Let's go back over here. So that she's able to become a bride, right? So that she's able to become the wife. What do we have over here? What's this say? This is when you've gone to war and Yah delivers them into your hand, and you have taken the people captive. And she must agree to be shorn and cleansed. Lots of stipulations set before this can occur. Yeah. Yeah, again, we look at this and we see that she's taken into this new situation, right?
I mean, either she was gonna do this or she was gonna die.
Well, right.
It'll
Yeah.
be tributes to have
To-
to pay taxes.
To come into the situation. We live in different times where wars happen and we hear about it on the news. It don't directly affect our situation. We're over here, right? Our people go away. They may die in war, and from that regard, it affects us. We never see our people again when they go off to war. It's been many years since we had war on this soil. And so we don't think about things in this way, where you're dealing with things in this way. But when we look over here, we see that this is a real situation that nations they dealt with. And this woman that was captive, this is her reality. Yeah, right. And she went along with it. I don't know what other choice she would have. And so, the Most High, of course, gives her this time of cleansing, this time of purification, this time of mourning. This life is for the living. It's as simple as that. And so when we see this, what we see over here with this, we see that this this woman that's this soon to be bride, she goes through this cleansing process. What's this? What's this here before we go? Reminds me of Acts 15, where guidelines is given to those Gentiles desiring to enter the assembly. Guidelines are given. Yes. Yeah. Because, inside, on the inside, we have laws, statutes, and commands. We have standards that we abide by. And, she coming in, has to learn our ways, which again is part of the process, right? And so if we look over here, let's go over to Revelation 19. Revelation 19. What's verse 7 and 8? So, let me find my cursor here.
Let us be glad and rejoice and give him praise. For the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife prepared herself. And to her it was given to be dressed in fine linen, clean and bright. For the fine linen is the righteousness of the set-apart ones.
When we look over here at the bride of Messiah, right? The bride, the wife, has made herself ready. She prepared herself to receive the husbandman, right? She's clothed in this white linen, which is the righteousness of the saints. And so we see this picture that's given to us by this scripture over here in Deuteronomy 21 that deals with this woman, this foreign woman that's captured. She's an outsider, but she is brought over into the inside and given the ability to become part of the commonwealth of Israel. And again, that process is purification, cleansing, right? Transition. Forgetting about. She really has to forget about her former self. Whatever she was, she's not that anymore, right? She was connected to these people who were the enemy, but she got to get over that and move forward. She got to turn from her ways that was part of those other people's ways, whoever they was. She got to turn from those ways and turn to the ways of the Most High. And so it's interesting that we see this over here in Deuteronomy because it teaches us, a lesson in how, we are to be when we become part of Israel.
Yep.
Because whether we are, natural Israel or Gentiles, we start off in a place that's separate from the Most High. And so it's necessary for each and every one of us to be, in fact, converted, transformed from what we were to what we were created to be. Let's go over to Isaiah.
I wanted to say
Go
real
ahead.
quick that in your famous words, that look like something. That conversion looks like something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know you come as you are, but you don't stay as you were.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, it's now, if you're a woman of, you're trying to be a woman of Yah, that looks like something. If you're trying to be a man of Yah, that looks like something.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't look the same way you were when you were in the world.
Right.
When you're in the bosom of the Most High.
Yeah. It's interesting that we think about Acts 15 that was mentioned over there. When we look at Acts 15, all of the things that are mentioned, the four things that are mentioned for these people, these guidelines that are given, all of them were associated with idolatry.
Mm.
All four of them. And so basically it was necessary for these Gentiles to turn from their idolatrous ways. Was the only way that they were going to be able to be accepted in the house of fellowship. And then they would learn every Shabbat the law of Moses. But they had to turn from what they were. They had to leave what it was that they were formerly attached to and be attached to something new. Does it say, this is also a show of humility to be made bare for the woman's life being spared and not and to not be boasted. Well, yes. When you think about the humility that is involved from the woman perspective, she's becoming what?
Bald.
No. She's becoming. It's hair. The hair will grow back, right? But when you think about the humility, that's connected with, it's all encompassing. It's more than just the idea of clipping her nails and shaving her head, right? It's hair, right? The hair that's gonna grow back, right? But she is facing this transition where, we're saying it's 30 days, but it's 30 days to forget about your whole former life.
Your family, your father, your mother.
Yeah, your brothers, your cousins that died, that were killed, probably in your face. And so it's necessary for that woman to be able to humble herself and move away from those ways, right? And so it goes beyond the shaving of the hair. That's the cleansing part, right? That's the purification part. When you think about the priest, he wasn't humbling himself by shaving; he was cleansing himself from shaving. The leper wasn't humbling themselves by shaving; they were being cleansed and purified. And so the humility piece comes with the fact that she now, is being joined to this new family, and she has to move beyond her former self. And so when we think about this again as thinking about it in terms of our own selves, we have to understand that we are like this captive woman.
Absolutely.
Where we have to make a change and say that I can't sit up here and be worried about the things that I left behind, because those things weren't for my better judgment to begin with. I'm moving into currently a place where I'm joining myself to the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I'm following in the ways of life. And I'm leaving the ways of death. Me and my own pride and, self, my ego, wants to think about, what I was and what good things that I lost or what have you. But the only way that I'm able to move forward is if I, I give myself that time to kind of, have that transition where I think about what was. But when that time is over, I'm on to new things over here.
I think Yeshua said it best when he said to the man who would follow him, like, oh, let me go bury my father first. Right? And Yeshua said to him, let the dead, and those dead he was talking about was people that was alive.
Yeah.
Right? But he likened them as being dead. Even though they were breathing and living, walking around, he said, let the dead bury the dead. So he's telling you to follow him and likening everything else out there as being something that's dead.
Yeah. And that, it sounds like a hard saying, but it's just as hard as what we see over in Deuteronomy with, you got 30 days to forget about your people. You got 30 days to mourn. Once that's over, it's a new life, baby. we getting into something new over here. And so Yeshua was harsh, like they're in the thick of it. Let me go and take care of my people, and then I'll follow you. He said, what? You let the dead bury the dead. Over here, this is about life and life everlasting. And so it sounds harsh. It sounds harsh when you think about it incorrectly.
Yeah.
But when you think about it correctly, it's a sad thing when people pass away, when people die. But we have these customs, and we sit up here and we go to these things, and at the end of the day, the best thing you can do is remember those people from when they was alive.
And not only that, but use their passing as as a warning sign of what not to do.
Yeah, what not to
As
do.
an example.
Or the fragility of life that that we have to be focused on what it is that the Most High has for us to be doing. All of these things, but it has to be. Our life has to be about life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Our life has to be about that life, not death. And so when we think about this from a spiritual perspective and understand that, understanding that we are in fact a bride of Messiah, that our duty is to make ourselves ready, to be purified, to be cleansed, and prepare ourselves and be ready to receive the husband. What do we have? What else do we have over here? Our old man is the one found slain. Now see, this is already good. Yeshua is the elder priest closest to us, bringing the offering for atonement and declaring our innocency. Now see, this over here is some spiritual thoughts about these situations, right? When we think about these things, when we look at what it is that we find in the Torah, all of these things are things that point us to Messiah and what it is that He has done for us. And when we get to the place when we're able to understand that, these scriptures open up for us, and we are able to draw closer to the Most High.
Yep.
All right, so again, we think about this change that this captive woman, goes through. Read for us over here, 1 through 3.
1 through 3 says,
Really, we want to look at 3, but just to keep it in context, let's look at 1 through 3.
It says, "The Spirit of the Master Yahweh is upon me, because Yahweh has anointed me to bring good news to the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim release to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of Yahweh and the day of vengeance of our Elohim, to comfort all who mourn, to appoint unto those who mourn in Sion, to give them embellishment for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, and they shall be called trees of righteousness, a planting of Yahweh, to be adorned."
Okay, very good. So when we look over here and we understand that, we see over here this thing that happens when the Spirit of the Most High, is joined to His people, and His people begin to declare this message, this proclamation, this good news. The ones that are the recipients of this message, right, are the ones who become then, in fact, the bride of Messiah. And so when we see over here, when it gets down to verse 3, these things that is given to these people, the ones that I wanted to make note of, which is something that I can't even take credit for. Over here in verse 3, I didn't ever look at this before like this until my wife sat up here and saw this, looking at these words over here. But when you look at verse 3, where it talks about embellishment for ashes, right? If we looked at this over here, this word here, beauty, translated as beauty, if we look at this, is a pay Aleph, Resh, right? Pa'er, right? Beauty, right? But this word for ashes over here, we click on it. Beauty for ashes, this word, which is a whole other word, afer, right? Afer, ashes. But if we notice, these two letters here have been reversed, right? It's the same three letters, but these two letters here are changed and transformed, right? And so when we go from this place of ashes, right, and move into this place of beauty, the things that are present in the ashes are transformed into the things that are beautiful, right? And so there's a transformation that happens once this news, this good news, gets inside of you, right? There's a transformation. We can see it just by, just looking at it. The fact that you're hearing this lesson and it's changing ashes to beauty, and it's changing mourning to praise. But it's interesting. It's interesting when you look at Isaiah, many different places. There are kind of these poetic. There's poetic artistically artistic things that are done with the language, with letters. If we look at the language, it helps us to see these things, and so it's interesting that, again, when just looking at this, we see this idea of a transformation that happens within the individual. Just like when we think about what happens within you and I. When the Spirit of the Most High comes and dwells on the inside of us, He takes what it is that we are and transforms us from within. And so it's the same thing that we see over here. And again, we're talking about the one who will in fact be the bride of Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we are the one that this is happening to us. We go from literally this dead thing, right? This thing that is just the remnants of something that used to be alive, right? We think about a dead thing, but if you're talking about something that's ashes, that's beyond something that's dead. It's something that used to be dead. It's not even currently dead. It's beyond dead, right? But transformed into something that is beautiful. Okay, so when we look at this, right, again, talking about the foreign woman, all of this we can look and see and think about what it is that happens with this woman as she transitions over into this new life, this transformation that happens, right? What are these two words in the paleo? I don't have my here, let me see. I don't have my let's see.
Whiteboard.
You want your real one?
real one might be messed up.
I have this one.
Oh.
Okay. Let me erase this old stuff off of here. Okay, so the word for beauty, which is the hey. Oh, hold on, let me see. Let me do it in the pictographs. Let me erase this off of here. So the pay is the mouth, open mouth. The olive is the ox's head, and the resh is the man's head. Okay, and the word for ashes, we still have the man's head, stays intact, which is interesting if we just think about that part of it, because the man, he remains, right? But the things that make up the man is the things that change. And I think this is the interesting part of this whole situation when we look at this, because when you see the change, the transformation part, is this part, right? It's the thing, it's the build up, it's the thing that defines him, right? The opening and the man's head. The ox's head. When you look at these words, the pictographs, the pictorial meanings, just right off of the top of the head, when I look at these things, again, the most integral part of this, I think, is the fact that these things, the build up, the foundation, the things that makes this man, is the thing that transforms, right? The things that goes from one thing to the other. And when we think about what it is that happens inside of us, right? The Most High deals with us, right? And the Most High brings out our the potential that we have inside of us, and transforms us, internally from, what we formerly were into this new creation. And so when we think about the bride, we think about this foreign woman who was a foreigner, she literally becomes a wife. And again, if he gets to the place where he don't want her, she can't go back to being a slave. He can't sell her for money. So she literally is transformed. And so I think when I look at this, to me, that the transformation between the comparison between the two words here, I think is the most important part over here, that when we look at these words. But I wanted to go back over here to go into this other part over here. When we think about this, something, verse 14. Oh, let's go back to Deuteronomy. Something that we kind of touched on. 21 verse 14. And something that, okay, so when we look at this, read 14 again for us.
And it shall be, if you are not pleased with her, then you shall let her go at her desire, but you do not sell her at all for silver. Do not treat her harshly, since you have humbled her.
Okay, so many commentators, including my wife, when we talk about this humbling process, they talk about the idea of the shaved head and the things that were done for purification as a humbling process. That's not what that means. It's not talking about that. Let's see what it says in the next chapter. Read for us 29. 28 and 29.
When a man finds a girl who is a maiden, who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife because he has humbled her. He is not allowed to put her away all his days.
Okay, very good. That man didn't shave that woman. He didn't clip her fingernails either. He humbled her. Okay? That's what it's talking about. Because when we look over here in verse 14, it says, the month went by. Verse 13. And after the month, another thing that some of the commentators talked about, maybe throughout the month, before the month was over, the man decided that he didn't want her before the month was over, and then got rid of her. But to me, it seems like there's a chronological kind of step process that goes on. You put aside the mantle of her captivity. She dwells in your house. She mourns her father and her mother a month. And after that, you shall go into her, the woman, humbling her, and be her husband, and she'll be your wife. And it shall be, after that happens, after you've went into her and became her husband and she became your wife, after that now, if you're not pleased with her, then you shall let her go. And so it's interesting when you look at a lot of these commentators. I know why they're doing it. I know why these people do it, because they think about this whole issue of divorce as if the Torah don't give us the parameters for it. And so, a lot of them will say, well, that time went by and he chose to not deal with her. And so, she has that leeway or whatever. But when we look at this, it's kind of step by step. Right? And she became his wife. And we see a thing that also we see this thing that's built in with the idea of the way that we as Israel do in terms of these betrothal situations. She was bound to this man once he decided that she was going to be bound to him. Once there was a common agreement here, and then she already gets the benefits of it. But then after that, after that happens, we see that it says that he was not pleased with her for whatever reason. Maybe she never was able to forget her former life. It don't say that, but what we do see is the fact that she can't go back to being this former person.
Women's rights ain't gonna like this thing.
No, with this, she didn't look like her old self anyway.
What you mean?
I'm saying like,
Oh,
you know,
you
they had
because she was shaved.
If they had,
Because she was shaved. Why she didn't? Why she look different?
Well, I mean,
Help us.
working me out.
Help us understand.
I mean, she looked like the Hebrew people by that point. I mean, they didn't go that far away. She didn't look like she was the Hebrew woman at this point. Like she wouldn't have, like, if they had purple fringes, she'd have blue. You know what I mean? Like
No.
if they had, you know, some other thing, whatever. You know, I'm just saying she wouldn't look like the foreigner at that time. So, she would just be. They couldn't just not let her be in at that point.
Well, they could, but they would be going contrary to the Torah. Because the Most High, again, we started off with dealing with the fact that He is merciful. And we see that, you know, just because this man over here wasn't pleased with her, she didn't have to be removed from the nation as a result of it. Treated as if she was, a slave any longer, because the clothes of her captivity had already been previously set aside. And so over here we see that transformation that happened that's not able to be undone. But not only that, we see that, you know, sometimes these things don't work out. Sometimes these things don't work out.
Lots of times.
And so, you know,
That's why it don't work to flirt to convert.
flirt
It don't work.
It
don't work.
To convert.
Flirt to convert does not
that's
work.
what he saw over there.
He saw.
He saw over there what the potential that he thought was over there. And this is all theoretical, right? If you're not pleased, then you shall. Right? And so not that it doesn't, she very well could have worked out. And we're saying she like it's an individual. This is theoretical. This is what happens, right? But if it gets to the place where it doesn't, you can sit up here and treat this person the way that you found her. Because she's already been transformed into this new thing.
She don't look the same.
Right, you can't put her away and sell her like a slave. No, you cannot. Right? That's not her position anymore. She's been transformed. And so it's interesting that we see over here another example of where it becomes necessary for a separation to be enacted. Is it the way that the Most High would have for it to be? No. But is it something that He allows for the sake of His imperfect people? Yes. Right? And so it's interesting when we look at this, because it helps us, and even as we keep on going down, it helps us to understand that when we look at these things that the laws that the Most High gives us in terms of these relationships. This is how, in fact, he deals with his own people. This is how he deals with us from a spiritual perspective. He takes us from this place of being enslaved to our carnality, enslaved to our flesh. We were, in this existence, in this captivity. But he causes for us to be free, and he transforms us into these, takes us from this place of being these slaves to wickedness, to workers of righteousness, right? And he makes, all of the provisions for us to be able to move forward. I don't want to say happily, but just for these purposes, I'll say happily. And the reason why we're not able to move forward, is only because of us not being able to take advantage of the things that he has made possible for us. And so, it's interesting, again, when we look at these things over here, the connections, the correlations that we find in these scriptures. I want to keep on going down here because when we see these things that deal with these firstborn inheritances, we see two different firstborns in the scripture. Okay, we see, I believe it's in Exodus 13. Oh yeah, read 13 and 15.
And it came to be, when Pharaoh was too hardened to let us go, that Yahweh killed every firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, of both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I am slaughtering to Yahweh every male that opens the womb, but every firstborn of my sons I ransom.
Okay, very good. So we see over here every male that opens the womb. So that's going to be the firstborn of the woman. Because the man don't got no womb. But the thing that we see over in verse, back in Deuteronomy, verse 17, but he shall acknowledge the firstborn, the son of the beloved, by giving him a double portion of all that is his, for he is the beginning of his strength. To him belongs the right of the firstborn. And so, again, we see the beginning of his strength referred to when it talks about Reuben, who was the firstborn of Israel. But each of the wives of Israel and the concubines, unto themselves, all had the firstborn that opened the womb. So I'm saying that we see over examples of the one that opens the womb being the firstborn of the woman, and then we also see the firstborn of the man. Because when we look at 15, Deuteronomy Deuteronomy 21, what we're looking at over here, this is an example. If he's dealing with his two wives, he's dealing with the two wives, they obviously are going to have their own firstborns among the two of them, right? But if he, with his two wives, one that he loves and one that he doesn't love, if he treats the one that he doesn't love, who had, is saying if the firstborn belongs to the unloved, I'm saying that is referring to the firstborn of the man, and it also is that backs that up when it says down in 17 where it's talking about the beginning of his strength. And so I think that when we think about this idea, first of all, understand the importance of the the firstborn in the culture, but also even understand within scripture, depending on what it is that where it's at, it gives you different understandings to what it what even is talking about when it talks about the firstborn. Because again, in Exodus, that's the firstborn of the woman. When we think about still thinking about Israel, or Jacob, he had a Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Isaac, and Ishmael, right? Isaac was the firstborn of Sarah, but he wasn't the firstborn of Abraham. But because of the fact that the way that it was that he came to be, he was called. Ishmael was never called the firstborn of Abraham. He was the firstborn of the woman in that case. And so again, we see these different designations given. I think that the point when we think about what we see over in Deuteronomy, really I think is more about the intent that we see over here. The reason why the one is favored over the other being because of the way that the husband is, feels about the women over here. And so for him to treat the one son bad based on his relationship with the woman is in fact the thing that's being kind of prohibited over here. Again, because when we think about the consistency in the scripture, it's kind of hard for us to kind of pinpoint which one is going to be more revered. Which one's more important? Is it the firstborn of the woman or is the firstborn of the man? Because really, both of these could have been the firstborn of the woman. But again, I think the problem that we see over here is the way in which this thing is being carried out in terms of the fact that he's treating the one son bad based on his love or lack thereof for the other one. Okay, let's quickly look at the rebellious son before we. I guess we got two more things to talk about. But the one thing that we can think about over here when we think about this stubborn or rebellious son that is stoned, by the way, it's interesting when we look at this, and people. I want for people to get away from this idea of harping upon, your physical birthright. Because this person had a physical birthright. This son did. But because of his rebelliousness, because of his waywardness, because of his stubbornness, he was killed. Right? That all of that stuff gets thrown out the window, when you don't live a life that's according to the Most High. He calls for his people to be a certain way. And when you think about this person that's being killed, what is it? Like, I can't imagine dealing with a child that has become a glutton and a drunkard. Like a child. Like, what is this? Is this a grown son? Or is this what is it talking about over here? Like, this son is so bad. He's so rebellious and wayward. This is not like little Joseph over there just cutting up. Like, this person is said he is a glutton and a drunkard. And the men of the city take him out and kill him.
He was bad.
Like, he's not just getting suspended from school.
I mean, these kids is probably worse than drunk. They on perks. They on, what I'm saying, all of these medications that's altering their mind state, and they're going out here and shooting other little kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about the times that we're in, with, the way that, young people are out here behaving, because of the fact that we, are this people that are, really just, disjointed, ununified people. We're not a nation of people. But you can see where, if we were functioning as a nation, where we would be able to rightly deal with these things that are going on. We have this culture where, our youth, they come up and they do these things. And we set the environment that allows for them to continue in those things. No supervision and no discipline, right? And it's a shame that that's the way that these things are, but at the same time, it's expected when we're in the state that we're in, because of the fact that we're so disconnected from the Most High. This is a fact. This is what we're dealing with. We deal with this, the spiritual drunkenness and gluttony, right? And from a spiritual perspective, when we see these people, they get, they're so drunk off of the wine of this world, where the things they just overindulge in carnality, and they're to a place where they just they can't even imagine a life that is real life, that's connected to life and the giver of life. And it's so hard when we look out here and try to deal with these people, because it's not just about you telling somebody what they should or shouldn't be doing, right? These people, there's no answer for these people but for them to come to the master and be transformed and changed. And until that happens, we're out here stuck in this cycle of watching these people be these we're literally looking at the effects of not having this law be something that is realized. They took that son out and they stoned him in the sight of everyone, so that people would know that you can't be like little so and so.
Right.
You can't be like little so and so, or this is what's gonna happen to you.
It would shut all that down.
If we had this,
it would shut it all down.
I think if we had something like this going on, it wouldn't even have to be to the point of a spiritual reformation. If we had some real justice happening around here, people sit up here and they do these things, and people know that they've done these things. Right. They ain't saying nothing.
They ain't saying nothing.
They just whatever. And this is the world that we live in, where the power is with the wicked people.
The power is in the children's hands too.
The power's in the children's hands. The children, if they sit up here, I'll never forget my neighbor called us to CYS on her mom. My neighbor called to CYS. My neighbor wasn't a teenager. And she called CYS on her mom because she was mad at her mom. And it was years before that lady got her kids back. Because she was, they came and took the kids.
They took the girl that called on her mom.
Yep, and her siblings away from her mom.
I wonder how she was.
I'm saying it could have been bad, but I don't think it was that bad. It was just regular hood bad. But for the kid to have the ability to know and just be mad at my mom, and know that if I call these people up, they'll come and get us. Like she don't understand how she made her situation worse than what it already was.
I know her situation wasn't no better than CYS.
And so
be put in a foster care.
Yeah. We live in this world where they put the power is taken away from the parents.
Yes.
And it's a total breakdown of community. We look over here and we see this in Deuteronomy 21. You see this thing structured perfectly. And we're able to see if you got this out of control person, it's not secret. They don't secretly take them out. They do it in the sight of everybody so they know I better watch myself. Because this could happen to me. And when we think about this, from a grand scale, understanding that, the Most High, this is just the Most High law is just his character humanized. And so when we think about the fact that, the Most High, he don't got no problem with taking nobody out. It said in I think it's 2 Samuel, rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. and stubbornness as iniquity and idolatry. These are things that, these things are connected to the Most High and His character in any way. But, these are things that, are present in the people that call themselves Israel. And unfortunately, there is a judgment that is waiting for the stubborn and for the rebellious. Dealing with rebellious people with rebellious spirit, it's like an impenetrable thing.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual thing. If we think about it in terms of what it says in 1 Samuel 15:23, this thing, you get these thoughts in your mind, and there's nothing that can sway you from these things. It's spiritual warfare. When people get to that place, according to Deuteronomy 21, there's no recourse. There's no turning back, because you've given yourself over to these things that are contrary to the Most High. What's this here? Romans 16. What's this verse right here? (16, 17, and 18).
It says, "Now I call upon you, brothers, watch out for those who cause divisions and stumbling, contrary to the teaching which you learned, and turn away from them. For such ones do not serve our Master Yeshua Messiah, but their own stomach, and by smooth words and flattering speech they deceive the hearts of the innocent."
They don't serve the master, but their own stomach, their own carnality, their own appetites. The things that cause them in their own selves to be full and sustained. It's interesting, and when we look at these types of things, these people who cause divisions and stumbling, these are acts. These are acts of rebellion. These are acts of spiritual warfare. The Most High is about unity, right? But the devil is about divisions and disunity. So when we look at this over here in Deuteronomy, these are the things that are birthed. These are the things that are birthed out of allowing for people, whoever they may be, to continue in rebelliousness and stubbornness.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting that we see this over here. Nobody's safe. Nobody's safe. Everybody is able to succumb to the chastisement of the Most High. It don't matter who you are. You could be the most beloved son, but if you get to the place of stubbornness and rebelliousness against the ways of the Most High, it's over for you. Okay, and lastly, at the end it talks about this man that hangs on a tree. It's interesting when we look at the way that Israel didn't kill people on trees.
Nope.
When we look in the scriptures, Israel killed people and then put them on trees. But they didn't kill you by hanging you. They might have killed you and cut your head off and then hung you on a tree. But then, even then, they'll take your body down before nighttime.
Put you in the ground.
But something about these people who, which, was a cursed thing, right? But even still, they wouldn't kill you by hanging you on a tree. Like, I guess more from a moral standpoint, that was just a terrible thing that some people did do. But if we look at things like what's it say in Joshua 8:29? What's Joshua 8:20? 28:29.
And Yehoshua burned Ai and made it a heap forever, a ruin to this day. And he hanged the sovereign of Ai on a tree until evening. And at sunset Yehoshua commanded that they should take his corpse down from the tree and throw it at the entrance of the gate of the city, and raise it over a great heap of stones to this day.
The people in that place got burned. So we burnt people. And then we took their burnt body and put that on a tree. What's 10 and 26? What's 10 and 26? Read 25 and 26.
Then Yehoshua said to them, "Do not be afraid, nor be discouraged. Be strong and courageous, for this is what Yahweh is going to do to all your enemies, whom you are fighting." And afterward Yehoshua struck them and killed them, and hanged them on 5 trees, and they were hanging on the trees until evening.
Okay, very good. Another example. Killed them first. We burnt people. We killed them. We killed you with the sword. In battle, we killed you. There's another 1 Samuel. I think they're cutting people's heads off, and then put them on a tree. But for whatever reason, like it's this cursed thing for you to be hung on a tree. And this is the way that they killed Yeshua, by hanging him on a tree and killing him that way. Like, he was tortured within moments of death by the torture. But they killed him on this tree. And it's interesting that this was so bad, it was worse for us than burning somebody to death. It was worse for us than cutting somebody's head off.
I think it's because it's like you're made a spectacle of. Like you're raised up high so everybody can see you. It won't be, you can stone somebody on the ground. Now
We
everybody's
stone
gonna see
people.
that. But once you put them on the tree, everybody's going to see you. And be
But
like, oh.
we would do it to people, but we wouldn't kill them that way.
Right.
You didn't watch the life go out like
Well, I think it was merciful. We was a little bit more merciful
that.
by killing you and then putting you on the tree. But now you on the tree dying, they looking at you, you looking at them like y'all looking at each other.
The torture part
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
We didn't torture.
Okay, yeah. It's the torture thing that
Right.
You get
Yeah.
killed by the sword.
we was gonna kill you or we wasn't gonna kill you. But it wasn't no in between.
In between.
We wasn't gonna just torture you. So even in okay. Alright, so even in killing or burning.
That's serious.
I mean, that's pretty torturous to burn.
It is. I mean, even stoning.
Stunning.
You ain't gonna go with the first stone.
Nah, you
It's
ain't.
gonna take a few stones to get you.
Yeah.
They gotta get you in the right place.
Right. You gotta be a headshot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that again, thinking about where, we're thinking about Yeshua is the fact that understanding that this act of hanging on this tree was this curse that was upon you, and understanding that Yeshua, of course, he became a curse for the salvation of his people, and it's just so amazing that we're able to have Yeshua to have come and lived and died for us, because of course we these wicked people, these undeserving people that we are, we're just so thankful that we have Yeshua to have come and gave his life and became a curse, so that we can be free from the curse. And so, it's just as we begin to be done over here, thinking about all of the ways that we're able to look at these things within the Torah, and see pictures of what it is that Yeshua has done for us. It helps us to be able to understand and appreciate Yeshua more and more when we're able to look and see over and over again, from different ways, from different angles, the depth that's involved in all that it is that he has done for us. It's it's endless. We can go on for hours. We can go on for 3 hours and 26 minutes talking about all of the things that we see in the Torah that point us towards Yeshua and what he's done for us. But for right now, I think we're going to be done. Let's see if anybody has any last comments. Go ahead.
I mean, this is something that we could discuss later, but when I see this, the people who come in, when I say people who come in off the street from wickedness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're just acting bad. There's two main issues. Number one, the women coming in. I really enjoyed this portion because, when they come in, we don't let them dress the way they dress on the outside when they come in.
Yeah, take them clothes of captivity off.
Exactly.
Be
I'm actually going to be using this verse in the future. And people really say, oh, well, the inside counts so much more, than the outside, and modesty has to begin on the inside. But Israel didn't have these foreign women coming in.
Stop shaking that tape.
In their foreign attire.
Say that again.
Israel didn't have the foreign women coming in their foreign attire.
No, take them clothes off.
Exactly. And the other thing would be children coming in from the world, because a lot of times we've experienced this where the parent is all gung-ho about the faith and coming in and changing their life and being new, but their children are kind of like on the fence. And we've had children coming in with worldviews that are at odds with our worldviews. It's not necessarily, it's because they was raised in the world for however many years, especially if they're a teenager coming in. But we've had even little children coming in, and you have to tell them, you can't just take so-and-so's toy and think it's okay, or you can't just make fun of this other child, or you can't, you know what I mean? This isn't a lunch cafeteria room when we're at Oneg, like no ripping on each other. Like it's just certain things I don't want to. They're children, so you can't pass judgment necessarily on them because they're kids, you know. But there's certain things that got to be righted within the children in order for them to be able to have fellowship with our children, because it's going to corrupt the children.
Yeah, it really has to be a trickle down thing, which is something that people, you know, they have to be taught and understand. That, you know, part of this life is teaching your children the right way to go. It's not. This life is not about an individual. It's about a collective. It starts with an individual, but it must continue on to the family, to and beyond.
Yeah.
And you know that's obviously something that people need to figure out. But again, you know, when we go through the scriptures, you know, these are things that we see. We see that, you know, the Most High deals with all of these things. He deals with people getting themselves right. And of course we have new problems because the man goes out and he finds this woman. He's not talking about bringing in a family. Like we live in this world now where we go out and find a woman and she already has a family. Mm-hmm. Right? Where that's not what we saw, but these are things that we deal with. And so, but we're able to apply these same principles to that type of a situation where, you know, you're bringing in a wife and her kids too. But the same things are true. You can't sit up here and have a relationship with the mommy and just lead the kids to their own things. You know, the kids got to get it too. Right. The closer we get to understanding the character of the Most High, the better we're able to understand that, you know, He loves the family. Mm-hmm. And He loves the inheritance of righteousness that's created, and He wants for that inheritance to remain intact and passed down. And ain't nobody talking about no silver or no gold.
Right.
Talking about the wisdom of the Most High.
Right. Which is more valuable.
It's far more valuable than rubies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that being said, we will be done for now. Y'all willing, we will be back on next Shabbat with some more. Don't forget, all you people that's in here now, go ahead and hit that like button. Share the video so that other people can see what we're talking about over here. And y'all willing, like I said, we'll be back on next week and talk about some more of this Torah. All right. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.